Alright, what is up? Today we are going to be talking about card advantage. So, card advantage is a hugely important concept in Hearthstone and all trading card games. And until you have a really good understanding of what card advantage is, it's going to be hard to become really successful at Hearthstone. So, I guess the best way to talk about card advantage is by playing a game with card advantage as the emphasis. So there are a few decks that do that really well. I'm going to be using Control Warlock because it's my favorite deck right now, but there are plenty of decks that take advantage of card advantage. So let's start off by defining what exactly card advantage is, right? So card advantage is basically having more cards in your hand than your opponent. And I mean, that's just the definition of it. It seems pretty straightforward, right? If you have 8 cards in your hand, your opponent has 3 cards in your hand, so you have card advantage. So, what does card advantage actually do for you? So, that's a good question. When you first start playing games, it's usually not obvious why you need card advantage or why it's important. I know when I first started playing Hearthstone, I didn't really place value on things that draw cards, but now I definitely do. And we're going to be playing through a game here from the standpoint of somebody who wants to always keep card advantage. So, so what does card advantage do for us? Back to that same question. So it does quite a few things. So by far the biggest thing that card advantage does is it gives you options. So Hearthstone is a game of options, right? When you start your game, you want to have as many options as possible. At the start of each turn, you want to have as many options as possible, because the more options you have available, the better that your best option will be. If you only have 3 cards in your hand, you have not that many things you can do on your turn. But if you have 10 cards in your hand, then you have so many more options. Odds are you'll find something better than if you only had 3 cards, because one of those 7 cards will be part of a better turn. So you're going to play Kobold Librarian. It's an amazing one drop. Deal 2 damage to yourself, but it draws a card. And cards like this are really the key to maintaining card advantage. Right? We have cards like Kobold Librarian, we have cards like Mortal Coil. So these are cards that cycle. So what we mean by cycle is these are cards that will draw another card when you play it. So when you play a card that cycles, you don't actually lose any card advantage. So I'm going to go ahead and life tap, which is probably the single greatest way to gain card advantage as Warlock. And so this is a control deck. And I'm going to go ahead and attack the hero here just because we don't have a great trade. And if he daggers up and hits me with a 2/2 dagger, then that's okay. I'm okay with that. But anyway, back to card advantage. So these cards that cycle are hugely important, and something that's almost as good as cycling is just using your hero power. Whether you're Warlock or not, using your hero power is absolutely amazing. It's because you get an effect without using a card. That's a great way to build up card advantage. It's really unfortunate I drew both Void Lords because these are my only 2 demons, so now my Possessed Lackeys are pretty much dead draws. But yeah, so because of card advantage, we have a lot of options. And all of our card drawing kind of led us here to draw our 2 Void Lords before we could get any off of our Possessed Lackey. It's not ideal, but it's fine. It's not the end of the world. So here, I'm going to life tap. Gotta keep up that card advantage. And this is a really awkward turn. I guess we should attack here, because if not, you can dagger and kill it on my next turn. That's not great. But yeah, so another thing there is we drew before we did anything else. That's because we want to start each turn with as much card advantage as possible. So if you know you're gonna draw, you want that draw to be the first thing you do in your turn, because it might open up more doors for you having that new card. And that kind of all goes back to that same idea of card advantage, of having options. When you have more options, you have better plays available to you. So this is not looking great right now. This game, very aggressive deck, have not been getting good draws. Um, I mean, it could double Defile into Mortal Coil on this, and that would clear the board. Is that what we want to do? It doesn't seem like a good move, but on the other hand, we have 5 plus 1 plus 2. We have 8 damage to our face next turn if we don't do that. Let's... You know what, I'm just gonna do it, just to prolong the game a little bit. Alright. So right there, we ended with the Mortal Coil to get that extra card draw. Normally, with Control Warlock, I tend to find myself always having 10 cards in my hand, and occasionally struggling to stay at that 10 card limit. But that kind of goes back to one of the very important points about card advantage, and that's sort of like wondering what is the optimal number of cards to have in my hand. Uh, and that answer is almost always going to be 9. You want to have enough cards in your hand that you will never overdraw, and having 9 cards is just quite simply the best way to do that. Um, you want to have the most card advantage you can possibly have without having a risk of burning a card. Um, that sort of depends on the deck you're playing. Some decks, burning a card isn't the end of the world, but with some other decks, like with Control Warlock, if you burn Blood Reaver Gul'dan, or if you burn Rin in a control matchup, then you basically lost the game. So that depends on the deck. That's an interesting choice for silence there. But like really here, this sort of does a good job of showing you what you can get with card advantage, looking at the cards in my hand right now. So if I only had like 3 or 4 cards, I wouldn't have anything good, but because I've been drawing all game, the odds that I have a good play for what's on the board are so much higher. So right now I could clear with Lord Godfrey, I could play Stonehill Defender and see what comes out of that. I could tap and play Stonehill Defender. So I'm going to start off with Stonehill Defender, because Discover, another great way to keep card advantage. That's why Stonehill Defender is so good. So this is definitely more of an aggressive deck, so I don't think we need Rin right now. But then that question sort of comes up of, do I have anything better? Right? So we have Tar Lurker, right? The 5 cost 4/7 basically on their turn. I couldn't put it down this turn. Whatever I play would have to go down next turn. I don't have a good turn 8 play, so let's just assume whatever I play is going to go down then. So I think Rin might be the best option here. Um, but yeah, so Discover is absolutely amazing. Oh, I should have tapped. So Discover is also an amazing, amazing ability for card advantage, because what it really does, if you think about it, is the benefit of card advantage is to have lots of options, right? Well, Discover, in a sense, it almost draws you 3 cards, not quite, because you can only choose the best of those, but it's like for those like 5 seconds where you're choosing which card to choose, it's almost like you have all 3 and you can only choose one to play. So if you have a 9 card hand and you play a Stonehill Defender, then you're really looking at 12 options. So you have the 9 cards in your hand and you have the 3 cards you can discover from. Oh, yeah. Is this over? No, this isn't over yet. Alright. This is getting close. Alright, so let's see. I'm definitely going to... So I could do Siphon Soul on the Leroy to get some health back. I think I'm better off playing Rin though, just to get some taunt on the board. I don't want to draw right now because my health is pretty dangerously low. But we can do this. And another reason we don't want to draw is because we could potentially overdraw. So this is a good example of where if we had 9 cards in our hand, it's possible that the opponent kills this Rin, I get the first heal back in my hand, so then I'm at 10 cards, and then I miss my draw. So it's really important to think about things like that. So this is not a great situation to be in. I think at this point our best bet is really to it's unfortunately going to be for us to just play a Void Lord and hope he doesn't have an Eviscerate. We could do Lord Godfrey into Doomsayer or something, but that doesn't seem great. So if he doesn't have an Eviscerate or a Silence, then we're not in awful shape, because then we can Siphon Soul next turn on something and get some health back. Oh, there it is. Alright. Well, I guess we live another turn. So right here, we could do a board clear, right? Or we can just play another Void Lord, because then that sets us up for a really nice Blood Reaver Gul'dan turn. And so this is kind of like the epitome of a Warlock playstyle, is all you want is card advantage. At least with the control and Q block style decks, is card advantage is what you want, right? But that's not always that straightforward to get. Card advantage is generally very expensive. If you look at cards that give you card advantage, there's always some very high cost associated with them. With most decks, that cost is a mana cost, but with this deck, it's that cost is not mana. That cost is actually just let me think really quick. I think we want to just attack this into something and then play Blood Reaver Gul'dan, right? We get that armor. We don't have any other demons, so this will give us, I think, the best shot at getting double Void Lord. Yeah, let's do this and hope. But anyway, yeah, so back to what I was saying. So cards that give you card draw are always very, very expensive. There's always a high cost associated with them. You look at Novice Engineer, it's a 2-cost 1/1 that gives you a card draw. You look at hero powers in general. A hero power is basically it's something that says it's like a card that at the end says draw a card on it, right? Because you're playing it without actually using a card. So that sort of replenishes itself. It doesn't use up a card from your hand. And they're never very good. So what's really nice about Warlock, I think, is that Warlock gives you the ability to trade, that the fact that cards that draw are usually pretty bad, for the fact that you can usually you lose health instead of tempo. So what Warlock is very, very good at is being able to maintain card advantage while still playing powerful cards. And of course the trade-off of that is you end up with some pretty terrible try to figure out what the best thing to do here is. So right now I have 10 cards in my hand, so I'm going to want to play something. So I think that the best move here might actually be to Lesser Amethyst Stone my own minion here to get back that 3 health and clear up some space on the board. And then I can do that to replenish health again. So that's sort of the downside when you play a very card advantage heavy game, is sometimes you have to make really suboptimal plays like that just to not overdraw. But overall, as you can see, it's given us a ton of options. Right now, because we have 9 cards in our hand, we can respond to almost anything the opponent plays. So it's really, really strong. I think at this point we might as well start doing this. We can Dark Pact. At this point we're just playing it safe, making sure that they can't burst us down. So at this point the game's pretty much over, right? But I hope that you've seen how important card advantage can actually be. In this game we had a pretty big hand throughout the whole game, and because of that, we almost always had options to what the opponent did. We always had just enough to barely hang in there because of that card advantage, because we always had the right option for their play. They had a big board of 3 health minions. We play a 3/9 with taunt that summons 3 1/3s. We always have that option available to us, and that's really just a testament to what card advantage can do. So this game's just about over now. Um, I guess we should go ahead and just end it. uh, but yeah, so right here, this is a fantastic example of a game where we came so close to losing, got down to 3 health, but because we always had the right options in our hands, we were able to come back. And that's another reason that Hand Druid is so strong, and the Handlock used to be a huge deck, is because card advantage isn't only about having cards in your hand so that you can play. It's about having a lot of cards so you have a lot of options. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions about card advantage. A lot of people think of card advantage in terms of like not having an empty hand. If you always need to have some cards, make sure you have draws so you can always have like at least 3 or 4 options. But really, card advantage isn't only about making sure you have some cards in your hand. It's about maximizing the number of cards you have in your hand and thereby maximize the number of options on each turn so you can really always make the best play. So that's it for this video. Just a really quick overview of card advantage, and I hope that I really drove home the point that card draw is a hugely, hugely, hugely important um, mechanic that you should really, really not underestimate. Um, Cards that give you card draw, like I said, are always pretty bad, but that's because card draw is so good. Look at Warlock, its hero power. You deal 2 damage to yourself and you draw a card for 2 mana, and it's considered pretty much unanimously to be the best hero power in the game. And there's a reason for that. It's because card advantage is king, especially in control matchups. In a control matchup, card advantage is even more important than in an aggro matchup, which is why you see a lot of aggro decks that don't really worry much about card advantage. But if you're really playing more of like a mid-range or control style deck, then card advantage is your friend, and you should always have that in mind when deciding what to do. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This is Hearthstone Academy. Thanks for watching.